everybody. Thanks for joining us again at Imr channel here. What we want to do today is take some time to do an installation video. Everyone's been asking, hey, can you come up with an installation video for the Imr front mount intercooler? Well, we've taken the time to do so. And today, I'm getting help from my friend Steve here. Steve's come up all the way from Houston to us here in Dallas at our Imr shop. Say hi, Steve.
Hello, how's everybody? Happy
Awesome.
to be here.
Awesome. So what we're going to be doing at the start of the video, you saw what's on the floor here. We have this awesome Imr front mount intercooler, and we're going to install this on Steve's car and help him keep his intake temps low, get that charged air nice and cool, making more power. This system uses a treadstone core, and that treadstone core is super efficient. They are very well known for having some of the best cores, and so we make no secrets about it. Those are the cores we use. We've retrofitted it with brackets to allow it to fit right into the Stingers, without the Stinger and the G70 and G80, without any modifications to the car's chassis. And we now have our own Imr couplers and everything. This set is actually powder coated, wrinkle black, and it's going to be a nice touch on his car. So let's get to it. Looks like we're about ready to get started on Steve's front mount intercooler. As I mentioned to you guys before, we're doing the front mount intercooler on his car. We're actually working with the 600 horsepower core, and we get an opportunity to put our piping in here. It's the full piping kit. It's got the merge collector and the charge pipe going all the way back up to the throttle body. We're going to get a chance to install that with these agency power intakes that he has. And my first time doing one of those with our install with the agency power, so we're going to get to see what that fitment's like. And we know we've had customers use those before, so it should be a non-issue. And I know he's got some other mods in here, like I think he's got a JB4 and a catch can, a few things that allow him to take advantage of the extra power this car has. So let's get into it. All right, so before we get started, I just want to highlight a couple of the tools that are needed. First, we're going to talk about a ratchet. I think you can use a handheld ratchet, manual one. Or I have an automated one. You're going to probably want a few extensions. I have some 3/8 extensions. There are some clamps that are far down, and I don't like to reach down and wrench. So the automatic ratchet with the long extensions is very helpful. For those band clamps, you'll need the 7/16. You'll need some 10s and 12 sockets when you remove the brackets on the OEM front mount intercooler. And what's really helpful, I picked up a set of these really small ratcheting wrenches, box wrenches. This is an 8mm, and I use this on the OEM hose clamp. Just another 7/16 wrench. You'll find that useful at times. Your good old trusty thin flathead screwdriver is good for getting under and popping up those clips that keep the brackets in safe. And you'll also find a couple Phillips in there, and you'll want that. This is a really cool tool. I like to use this also. It's called a finger ratchet. It took me 3 months to find this new one and figure out what it's actually called, but you can put different sockets on there, 3/8, and pretty cool. And it's directional, so you can actually change it, tighten and loosen. And that should allow you to be successful here. All right, let's get into it. All right, so one of the first things I like to do is start removing clips from the top of the bumper cover. Pretty easy. You get your flathead in here and just get underneath, pop it up, and pull it out. Now there are 5 across the top in this area here. Those are the ones you need to remove. After that, you go ahead and just pop these covers up. These covers come right up, and they reveal to you 10mm bolts that are right under this cover. You'll see them right here. It's actually right on this side. and it holds the bumper upper part to the fenders. So we're going to get that on both sides and move forward. Ready? Yep. The next thing you're going to want to do is remove the fasteners that attach the front bumper in the wheel well. There's a 10mm right about here, and then you have two other clips, one here and one here, that will need to be removed. So we're going to go after that. If you have your car lowered, which this customer does not, you'll find that on lower cars you have less of a gap here, and you'll have less of a gap here. What you can do is just turn your wheel to the side slightly, and that'll create some room for you without having to do anything like take your wheels off. So the next thing you'll want to do is take out the clips that are underneath the bumper. There will be probably about 6 clips across the front that you'll need to take off, and they pop off easily with the screwdriver, the flathead. Now, one of the things that I made sure to do in this video is show you that all of this can easily be done without having a lift. We've used some convenient oil changing ramps. They lift the car probably about 8 inches, and you can probably see that from the video here. And this can easily be done by anyone. The advantage of having those ramps is not just to get under to release those clips from there, but when you install the intercooler, you actually want to push it from the bottom up and hang it. So we'll show you how that's done once we get this bumper off. Let's go ahead and remove these clips. Some of these are just dangling. Okay, so now that we've got all the clips off, we should be clear to go and start prying back the bumper. What I like to do is first remove the top part of the bumper, and that should help pop some of this off. If it doesn't, that's okay. I just tend to reach under here and over here and pull back a little bit. Those happen to pop out on their own. The next is I reach out to the side and pull the bumper away from the fender like that. And then same thing over here. Now we have all of that free, and you can slowly start to lift the bumper up off the car. Now what I want you to do is make sure you continue to support the bumper as you pull it off, but you'll need to make sure you protect, or not protect, but you lift this over the hood release latch. Once you do that, the bumper will actually try to come off. Now, it won't fully come off because you still have one connection down here that we'll just need to slide back the arm on. Now that this is back, we can further detach it by swinging this arm back all the way. That fully releases it, and we just disconnect it. And then we're free to bring it away. What we want to do next is get under here and remove the top bracket off the intercooler. You are going to need a 10mm socket on the left side here, and on the right side you'll need a 12. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to do the 10 on the other side since I already have the socket on. Then we're going to switch over to our 12mm. Then you can just lift this off the mount, remove the rubber that was in between, and pull all of this out. Now we're going to go ahead and start working in the upper engine bay. One of the things I like to do is remove the engine cover. It's pretty. I like resting and having a working station up here, or a tray to hold things. So I like removing that so I don't get it messy and dirty. So I have my tray up there, and we're going to go ahead and start removing things. We're going to need to remove the map sensor. We can disconnect it here, just like that. Pull that off. And we're going to unfasten this and transfer it over to the new charge pipe. Then we're going to go ahead and remove the blow-off valves from the merge collector and a few other things. Let's get started. Next, we're going to start removing the hose clamps that connect the charge pipe that is attached to the throttle body. Let's go ahead and use our flathead on these worm clamps, just like that. And that should be loose enough. I'm going to do the side on the throttle body also. And that should be loose enough also. One of the next things I like to do is take the boost control solenoid off. That's attached to the charge pipe with a 10mm bolt. So I'm going to go in there with my extension. And that comes right off. Disconnect the nipple, the holes from the nipple down here. This is a vacuum and pressure reference nipple, and so the boost solenoid needs to have a line going down there, but we're going to remove that for now and reinstall it in our new one. Simply squeeze this retaining clip and pull it up, and then you can just yank that off. Kind of tuck it out of the way. Next, I'm going to use the 10mm to remove the blow-off valves. Now, he doesn't have the actual OEM intakes. These are the agency powers, but he does have the blow-off valve hose going to the agency powers. So you just squeeze the clamp that comes on it and pull back, and it should come right off. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Squeeze the clamp and pull it off, and these come right off. I'm just going to rest these up top for now. What I notice is that the O-ring gasket that's at the bottom of the blow-off valve has a little debris. You want to just kind of wipe that off and make sure it's nice and clean, so when you put it back in place, they have a nice seal. But we're going to rest these up here for now and continue going at pulling out all of this hardware. Next, we're going to remove this 10mm that holds the charge pipe going to the throttle body attached to the big OEM merge collector. That should free up the pipe. And now that you have the clamp off the top, what you'll need to do is use a flathead and just pry under a little bit and remove the seal. Just break that seal a little bit. And that should allow you to, there you go, you can actually hear it coming off. That should allow you to wiggle the OEM charge pipe out of position. All right. I like doing that because it just frees up a little room for me to get in here with these 14mm nuts. I didn't mention it with the tool before, so I apologize for that. but we're going to actually use that. And on some cars, for some reason, I noticed that they're over tightened. So we have a breaker bar here that ratchets, and we're going to go ahead and use that. Unsensible that it's that tight. Doesn't make any sense. Breaker bar. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. That allows you to now remove these if you weren't attached to the hoses. So now we're going to attack the hoses that go down to the turbo outlet. Now, you'll notice that on these hoses, there are clamps, hose clamps, and those hose clamps actually have caps on them. All the hose clamps, like the one up here, they actually had caps. This customer removed his cap off this. But you'll find the same caps down here on all the hose clamps. You can see this cap here, and there are caps here, and caps here. So let's go ahead and show you what to do with that. So what I like to do is just get a flat head, and one that's got a pretty sharp tip, and just kind of wedge between the cap and the actual piece, and slowly work side to side, and that should pop the cap up. It's going to probably drop to the floor like that if it pops up quick and you can't catch it, but that gets the job done and allows us to get the cap off. I'm going to do the one, see, like that one for the turbo just came right up, so we get to lift it off. And we have caps on this side, so we're going to do the same. Now I want to remove the hose clamps that attach the hose to the turbo outlet, and this is where I like having my 8mm ratchet. Gets in there in nice and tight spots. All right, and it's just about loose enough that I can do it by hand, and it's pretty loose now, so I should be able to just pry it off, just like that. We're going to do the passenger side now. Same thing. Comes right off with a little elbow grease. So, what you want to do is get your flat head up under this part and just pry it up, and it comes up like that. If this middle part stays, you get under there and pry that up also. And the same thing on the far side. Just get under it, pry it up. All right, now that that's off, you're left with a retaining clip. Get under there with a screwdriver and just remove it like that. Do that for the top and bottom. And then finally you have another middle piece, and that middle piece unclips, and just like that you can remove it. And after that, the retaining mechanism is technically out of place, even though you have the shiny part left. You can just pull this out, but you may need to get under here a little bit with your flathead. So I would stick the flathead in here and wiggle it just a bit, and it pops right off. Okay, let's do the same thing on the other side. On this side, we're left with one of those caps on our worm clamp. So we do the same technique. I actually like to go between the band and the screwing part and pop that up. It gives me some leverage to pop it off, just like that. Take my Phillips and loosen this. Once we do that, we have enough slack there. We should be able to wiggle this off. I do want to break the seal, so I'm just going to stick this in a few different points and break the seal. And then I'm going to wiggle this off. Just like that. Now, you'll notice that the intercooler itself is actually loose. So I'm just going to come back around and lift it off the bottom mounts. The next thing we want to do, now that we just pulled off the intercooler, we see the bottom mounting brackets, and so we're just going to use our 10 mil and our automatic ratchet to go ahead and mount those. Now that we have removed the piping from the intercooler, we have pretty much the hoses attached to the merge collector, and we have the Z-pipe going down to the driver's side in front of the wheel. I think we've made enough clearance that we can just start to manipulate the OEM merge collector out of the way. So we're going to try and twist and turn some of this, pull and push, and try to get this out. In order to pull it out from the top, you may want to give it a little help by taking this piece and just pushing it, folding it back that way, and that might give you the extra clearance you need to pull it out from the top. This is the configuration you're going to go for with the IMR piping. You're going to have almost a 90 coming here and this Z pipe. And what you're going to want to do is have a similar configuration. For some people, you might find it helpful to pop the cap off this and loosen this clamp and get this hose off here. This does cause a little bit of obstruction while removing it, but I have done this a few times and I'm able to remove it without an issue. Next, now that we removed the charge pipe's connection to the intercooler on the passenger side, we want to go ahead and just gently start to wiggle this out. And you might find that the 90 at the bottom is catching, but just keep rotating the pipe as you take it out, and it comes out all in one piece again. At this point, we're going to go ahead and just remove the throttle body. Now that we've made space to pull the throttle body coupler off by removing the other charge pipe, we can now go ahead and just break the seal here and pull it this way without having that pipe in our way. So I like to, again, get under here with a flathead and just pry up a little bit, just to break the seal. Try not to gouge your throttle body flange, but the idea is just to get that throttle body moving, the pipe moving, or the hose moving, and back it off. You're going to need to wiggle it a little bit, and it comes off just like that. Next, what we want to do on OEM cars, you're going to have these shields here, and they come underneath and behind the crash bar. This one was trimmed by the owner because they were rocking some of these scoops, and we removed those so we can actually remove this shield. So again, these are 10 millimeters. You have one here, one here. You also have another on the side here, and then down below right here. Same thing on the other side. You have one down here and another down below over here. So Once we remove those, this should be ready to come out. That's off. Now, I've pulled this back off the support frame here. What I notice is there are a few spots where the wires are tied down. We're going to go ahead and cut those zip ties just to free up the wires. One of the next things we want to do is just release the connector from the sensor. You press this tab in and it should release it. And you pull back. Just that simple. We're going to end up removing this also, but we just want to disconnect the wires first. And then you have clips along here that are holding that harness. So we're going to remove those clips too because we're going to get rid of this piece. We're not going to reuse this, but sometimes I just like preserving it. So you can squeeze this in and start to pull it out. What we'll do is, at the end, we'll go ahead and zip tie this back up. At this point, we're going to remove the sensor and make room for the intercooler to be mounted. 10mm sockets will get the job done. There's one more bolt underneath. You just need to remove that. This bolt will not be used again in the future, as our mounting points will raise the sensor just about a hair and maybe an eighth of an inch, and so this bolt will not be needed. Alright, now that we've removed the sensor, we can tuck the wire out of place and out of the way. Then we get to hang our front mount intercooler core. The front mount intercooler core has been fitted with brackets that allow you to easily put it in position. This is the easiest hang or mount of an intercooler, I think, on the Stinger. What we're going to have happen here is we're just going to push it up from the bottom, and we're going to slide it up and let these brackets hang on that. Just be sure to avoid hitting some of these other brackets and sensors. So let's go ahead and make that happen. Hold it from the bottom and just push up. And turn it in. And that's it. It's hung. Now obviously it doesn't stay like that, but we'll get it fixed in position and line it up once we have all the piping in place. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is put in our Imr Merge Collector. But before we do that, we need to go ahead and take the clamps off the OEM Merge Collector where they connect to the actual turbos. So let's go ahead and do that. Just take them off. Okay, so we are about to install our merge collector, and what we are prepared to do is we want to mock things up. So first you want to hold this in the right direction. What you'll notice is that the mounts for the blow-off valves are tilted forward. So you want this tilt forward to be facing the radiator. Now, next, you'll want to put on the band clamp. I like to have the clamp facing this way for easy access from above. And then you want to go ahead and put on your elbow, just like that. And you don't have to lock it down. I would also tilt the elbow slightly
forward like this. Now, from here, you can go ahead and put the clamp down over the hose like such. And you don't need to tighten it down fully, but you just want to get it on and leave it in position. You'll tighten it up later. You want to have some flexibility to move things around before you have it in their final position. Next, you'll want to put your elbows on, and these will connect to your turbo outlets. As I mentioned before, you're going to want to reuse the hose clamps that go to the turbo outlet, and so I like to position these so that they are facing the middle. So this one goes this way facing the middle, and this one goes this way facing the middle. That way you can tighten them after they're in position. So let's go ahead and slide this down in here. All right. After you place your merge collector in, you'll want to take a step back and take a look at its proximity to the pulley. You want to just make sure that you have the elbow at the bottom up high enough so that you can turn or rotate the collector this way towards the radiator. So what we've done is we've pushed the elbow up onto the bottom of the merge collector higher to give us more clearance and allow us to rotate the merge collector back this way. Now we think we have sufficient clearance, but the way we like to check that is to just line the blow-up valves off here, and you see you have a good amount of clearance between the blow-off valve and the pulley in the back. Now that we verified with a quick mock-up fit check that we have sufficient clearance to the pulley, we can go ahead and put the blow-off valves back up top, and we can start to fasten the hose clamps to the turbo outlets and to the merge collector, and then we'll work our way down and around with all the other piping. So the next thing we'll do is install the Z-pipe. Remember, the Z-pipe is intended to connect to the 90-degree coupler at the bottom of the collector. So we put these two clamps here just so that we can have the clamps up and in position to connect. You'll have one clamp that connects at the bottom of the 90-degree coupler, and another one that'll connect on the straight that goes to the 180 that comes here next. So let's just go ahead and push this up in position. So as we look down in there, we see that our pipe, the Z pipe, is really close to going in. What we'll want to do is swivel the 90-degree coupler a little bit that way towards the engine so that it can meet up nicely with our Z pipe. That's why we didn't want to tighten this yet. We want to be able to make slight adjustments where possible. So let's go ahead and do that. So I was able to swivel the coupler towards the engine slightly, and that allowed me to push my Z pipe into the bottom leg of the coupler. Now I'll go ahead and I'll put the hose clamp in place. One of the things that allowed me to push the Z pipe all the way in from the side of the car was once I got it started and it was just inside of the coupler, I was able to twist it back and forth like this so that I can push it in. So that allowed me to get the pipe in. I'm at least an inch, maybe an inch and a half inside, and I'll leave it there for now until I see how much room I need with my 180 pipe on the driver's side of the intercooler. All right, now we have the 180 pipes. What you'll notice is on the 180 pipes, they're not flat. We have halfway across the body, the back leg split and it's tilted up. So you'll notice that the back leg is also longer. So the back leg is longer and should connect with the Z pipe. The shorter leg goes to the 3-inch coupler on the front mount. So we're going to go ahead and attach the coupler to the longest leg, and we already have some clamps in here, so we're going to go ahead and put that clamp, or put that hose on the end of our Z pipe, and start to fit the two up. So we have at least half an inch here already, but what we're going to want to do is come back and pull this off the intercooler some. That allows us to have the pipe go further in on this side. So we're in at least an inch here. Now you can adjust the straight pipe here to get as far back on this as you need, but really what you're focused on is giving enough room for the clamp to be on the other side of the bead. And once you have enough for that, you're good to go. That was just a mock-up fit. Now I really need to pop this off again to put my clamps in place. All right, so we were able to mock up the piping, and I want to show you exactly where I have the clamps on the inside positioned. The clamp that is on the inside closest to the Z pipe, or end of the Z pipe, is actually pointing up towards the engine bay. The clamp that's on the 180 side of the same hose coupler is up top and pointing backwards. So that allows me to get to the fasteners, and I should be able to tighten those down later on. Up front, we have the hose, the 3-inch straight hose clamps facing the front of the car, and that just allows, again, easy access. You can do whatever you want there, though. That's pretty wide and open and easy. But this side seems to be in place and done. Let's go over to the passenger side. Okay, so now we want to move to the throttle body charge pipe. This is probably one of the more challenging pipes to put in. We tried to do this in one piece to accommodate everybody. Now I think this can be easily accomplished, but what we want to go ahead and do is put our clamp on first, our hose on first. The hose should be oriented such that when the pipe sits in the car, the pipe is going to be like this, so the throttle body section is pointing straight back. That means the front of the pipe with the IMR logo is going to be on a slight angle. And then that also means that you need to orient the hose such that it's sticking out sideways. So that's about the right position. It's tilted backward and slightly up is what that ends up being. The other thing I want you to see is I've already put in position, even though I didn't put the fasteners in, but I already put my map sensor in. When I remove it from the OEM, I stick it right here just so I don't lose it. All right, so when we stick this in, keep in mind, this is flexible. So what we want to do is, we'll have to manipulate this as it goes in, wherever it gets hung up. But the idea is to go ahead and push this in from the top down bottom. Let's go ahead and do that. All right, here we go. So just like you took out the old one, it's helpful to position the front towards the engine, and once you get the coupler down in there and past some of the first pieces that obstruct it, then you can start to turn it back. You may have to help it get past some of the hard lines that are there, but it does get down. What I'm continuing to do right now is I'm helping to squeeze and pull the coupler down past some of the subframe pieces. And there it is, all the way down. So what you notice now is that once we had the position down below, it also helped us generally line up with the throttle body. So what we'll do is actually squeeze the 3-inch coupler on and put the clamps, and then we'll be good to go. So what we're going to do now is put this 3-inch straight coupler on. To do that, I simply move the charge pipe out of the way, and I'm going to slide the coupler back. Now you'll notice that the coupler is a little just undersized. I wouldn't say undersized, but it's just a little snug to put on. So what I do is I put my fingers in to the end, and wherever it's binding up, I'll just push down and force it on. And that's a snug fit, and I guarantee that's not going anywhere. Now we're going to try and position the pipe again, bringing it back down so that we can get the hose positioned inside, but we also want to bring the clamps on so we don't get caught not having clamps in position. One thing I'll point out, just as it was snug getting the coupler on, you're going to have to back the clamp nut off just a bit and expand the clamp even more so that it has room to stretch over the OEM setup. So once I took off the clamp nut, I was able to get the clamp over the largest part of the throttle body, and that allowed me to get the nut on. The nut is just on a few threads. I just put it on by hand, and when we tighten it up with a tool, we'll be able to get it much more snug. So at this point, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to slide this clamp over the hose, over the pipe, and I'm going to maneuver this back down, and I'm going to use a screwdriver to help me position this. So we were able to pry around the hose and pop the pipe down into it. We worked our way around slowly, and now we can bring back over the clamp and place it in position. The bead is right here, so you want to be right next to the bead, and we'll tighten that up later. Next, we're going to go down and try to align the hose at the end of this pipe to the front of the intercooler with the 180. So the last thing we want to do to make sure we have all of our hose clamps in place is to get a hose clamp around the hose that's at the bottom of the throttle body charge pipe. To do that, we're going to actually disassemble one of the hose clamps, taking the nut off, and we're going to position it in the engine bay like this, with the fastener side towards the engine. And we're going to keep it free so we can wrap it around the tube, or wrap it around the hose. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we've done is we've wrapped the hose clamp around the charge pipe, throttle body charge pipe side, and it doesn't have the nut on it yet. So we were able to align the bolt on it back through the end that we put the nut back on. So we're going to go ahead and compress it with one hand and put the nut on with the other hand. To do that, you certainly don't want the 180 pipe in place yet. You want to be able to reach in there with both hands and put that fastener on. So we're going to go ahead and do that. All right, now we put the nut on. What's cool is we're going to rotate that so that we're almost pointing straight up. What that allows is us to put extensions on our ratchet and hit it from the top of the engine bay. But for now, while we're down here, we're going to take the time to put our 180 pipe back in and line up the hose clamp with everything else that's needed to lock it in position. So one thing I want to mention to everyone, well, first, make sure when you put your pipe in the hose, you want to make sure that you have the beaded section of the pipe at least about an inch in, so that you can get the clamp on, and the clamp will have its own section of hose to bite on the other side of the bead. So the other thing I wanted to highlight is we like the orientation of the hose clamp to be about this. So we're going to slide this onto the hose, and that gets us to a comfortable point where we know the bead is on the other side of it, and we're not going to get any leakages when we're boosting. So that's a good position there. And on the front side, we're going to make sure we have the pipe pushed in the intercooler intercooler hose sufficiently. Identify where the bead is, and then start to fasten the hose clamps back on. So we were able to put the hose clamp on. As you see, we have it pointed up at an angle. That was allowing us to put a socket or a ratchet on there of some sort that would allow us to quickly tighten up that clamp. Now that we have that in position, we can manipulate the pipe however we want because it's flexible. The hose coupler is flexible, and now we can position the front one and try to straighten it out in the front hose going to the intercooler. So we can feel where our bead actually is, and we can move the pipe accordingly, and then tighten the clamp right on the other side of where the bead is, which is right about there. Now, based on how we maneuvered the hose on the charge pipe going to the throttle body, we were able to put the 180 pipe on that hose and then put it into the hose that's on the passenger side of the intercooler core. We still haven't fastened up the intercooler. It's just hanging on the original mounts that we set it on. Once we have all the piping in place, it will make more sense as to what the final position is. So at this point, what we want to do is make sure we know where our beads are and then put the clamp on just on the other side of the bead. So let's go ahead and snug up all the hose clamps on the front of the intercooler, and we'll work our way around and do all of what's in the engine bay also. We have sufficient fitment of things, even though we haven't bolted up the intercooler core to the frame yet. We are comfortable enough with the pipes being connected. We want to go ahead and lock them in position. I'm always careful not to over torque these. I have a general feel of where things are and the general torque that's needed. We'll go ahead and post the torque needed for these clamps after. What we're going to do is come around to the front of the car and start to look at hanging the intercooler so that it's straight. So the first thing we want to do is start positioning our sensor back in place. So we're not going to fasten it all the way down just yet. We're just putting the nuts on, putting them in place. And as we look down, we want to try to maneuver the intercooler and keep things level. So you may find that you want to push on one side or another to try to make sure that the intercooler is level with the bottom of the crash bar. Yep. So now that we have things loosely in position, we see how the lines of the intercooler aren't perfectly lined up yet. But once we go ahead and push things around, they start lining up pretty quickly. Furthermore, we can adjust how the coupler sits in the front of the intercooler to further hold it in the position we want. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to come back over here and loosen up the front part of the intercooler coupler and push the intercooler into position and also push the pipe back into position and get that final spot where we actually are horizontal. We've gone ahead and pried up and pried down on the intercooler, allowing the brackets to flex a little bit with the fasteners in place. So now we see what we think is a pretty straight line for the intercooler fins and bars and plates as compared to the crash bar. So now that we're comfortable with that positioning, we're going to go ahead and lock back up on all of our clamps, and that's going to secure the intercooler in the proper position. I'm going to loosen this connector right here and its bracket so that we can reach inside and use our tool. With a 10mm socket, I can quickly remove that. I put the 10mm back in for safekeeping and just move this out of the way for the time being. I switch off to my 7/16 deep socket and it allows me to get in here on my hose clamp. Once I feel for where my bead is, I can then position my hose clamp and go and fasten. I'll do the same next on the front end. Again, always feeling for where my bead is. And this one's pretty far out, but there it is. Feel it right there, just on the other side of the IMR here. And that tightens up all the clamps on the hoses on this side. The last clamp that we need to get to is on the 90-degree coupler that's at the top of the Z pipe. Now that we have our hose clamp in place on the top of the Z pipe, we can go ahead and hit it with the ratchet and just we can hit it with the socket and tighten it down. Next, we can tighten the hose clamp at the bottom of the merge collector. Alright, now let's go tighten the hose clamp that's on the bottom of the throttle body charge pipe. We're going to reach down into the engine bay from above, get over that socket, tighten her up. What we want to do now is, before we put our hoses back on, we want to, with the blow-off valves in a free state, put the fasteners back in. It will be much easier to put the fasteners back in before we connect it to the intakes. Now that we have our charge pipe in place, what we want to do is go ahead and reposition our bracket and reconfigure it slightly, just so that it can hold the solenoid and all the other wiring. We've provided for you a mounting point for that, so what we're going to do is take the bracket off and we're going to attach it down here. So to do that, you simply would grab the bracket like that and squeeze it. See how those are bent outward? You just squeeze them inbound again, gently. And once you do that, it simply slides out. The way you want to configure it is so the bracket sits on the mount like this, with the majority of the bracket being above and the bolt hole being on the lower end. So when you put it on, it sits higher. What we're going to do is also bend this 90 degrees so that the bracket and the boost solenoid sits back this way to clear the map sensor. So we're going to do that now. So I've bent the bracket, and it really doesn't have to be 90. It could be anywhere from 45 to 60 degrees or so. The idea is just to bend it enough so that it goes back or pushes the boost solenoid back and gives you sufficient clearance to put your map sensor connector back there. So let's go ahead and use our fastener to mount that back. Your kit will come with an Allen head, 10mm Allen head. Still recording? One thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and push this back in and spread it apart. One thing you can do is just open it up a little bit so there's enough bite to create tension and not allow it to come back out, and then go ahead and put it back in position. If you find you've opened it too much, then just squeeze the ears back in position. Don't do it too much because you don't want to wear them out. And it's just enough to create that tension that keeps it on the bracket. Now we'll torque that up. Lastly, you'll want to put, your kit will come with a nipple that is for your boost reference. So we'll go ahead and install that nipple and put this vacuum hose back on. It connects to the solenoid. And then we'll also take the time while we're back here to go ahead and put the map sensor connector back in place, as well as the fasteners for the map sensor itself. Alright, so we're just about done. We finished installing all of the piping for the intercooler. The intercooler is locked in. All the hose clamps are in place and secure. We're on the home stretch. All we need to do now is put back any kind of intakes, scoops, or any other accessories that we had to take off to accommodate putting in all the piping. Then we want to reconnect all of our accessories, like this one. You want to make sure these 10 millimeters are all fastened up, and then you're going to want to secure the harness with some zip ties to the bumper crash bar, and make sure that we don't have any loose wiring just dangling. This wiring is part of his scoop kit, so we're going to go ahead and secure those back up. Alright, now that the intercooler and everything's back in place, we slid the bumper back on just the same way we took it off, and we're going to put back all of our fasteners and captive. We're going to put back all of our clips in place, and now we're going to also make sure we have all of the clips along the bottom. Before you go ahead and put anything on, one thing you want to make sure of is that underneath you actually have the front bumper sitting underneath of the tray. So we're just going to do a quick inspection and make sure that our bumper is in position. If you're working by yourself and only have two hands to spare, I like to put the bumper back up in position first, and then just hold this off a bit. You want to make sure that you get this clip back up in the harness connector back up in position, and reattached to the actual connector. Alright everybody, there you have it. We just finished the install of the Imr intercooler. She looks pretty sexy. You can see some of the Imr logoing kind of hidden in the back. Some people on other platforms have removed some of the grill. I don't think any of that's necessary. I think sometimes it's kind of cool to kind of know there's something back there, and you only see it if you end up kind of gazing in and really trying to concentrate on, hey, what's behind the bumper. Really cool. Love the grills on these cars. So let's get them off the ramps and let them head on home and enjoy the rest of this awesome Saturday. Thank you.